In the first part, we saw Jooheon Suh getting a chance to change his destiny, but, as luck would have it, things started to repeat themselves. After giving the order to retrieve a relic, Jooheon noticed Linda Walker. Remember her? She's the CIA agent talking to someone new. Turns out, it was Kiyoshi Abe, a Japanese excavation agent, and the two knew each other. Kiyoshi was surprised to see Linda there and asked why she had travelled such a long way, especially since, in his opinion, it made more sense for him to be there. He was from a neighbouring country after all, so retrieving relics from Korea seemed more natural for him. Linda, clearly irritated, gritted her teeth and explained that the US was just recovering relics to hand them over to Interpol. Their mission, she claimed, was purely for academic research. Kiyoshi, impressed by her explanation, responded with a little jab. What if Japan said it was also interested in the relics for academic research? Would the US hand them over? Of course, he already knew the answer would be a firm no. Linda shot back, questioning why they should rely on the US and whether they should really trust someone who was basically stealing relics in the first place. But Kiyoshi, with some serious confidence, replied that both countries shared the same end goal. And, in the end, they would get the relic no matter what. Meanwhile, Jooheon, watching them from afar, became suspicious. He knew that tombs had been popping up all over the world, but no one really understood where they came from. Only a few countries, like the US and Japan, were aware of their existence and had started secretly studying and even stealing relics. Jooheon, aware of the situation, wasn't about to let them continue unchecked. So he began spying on them, trying to figure out their plans. Soon, he realised they weren't as knowledgeable as they seemed. Seizing the opportunity, Jooheon took action. He discovered tomb glyphs, inscriptions that relics used to explain everything about themselves, both inside and outside the tombs. If you could read these glyphs, they would tell you where the tomb entrance was and even reveal what traps lay inside. Pretty convenient, right? Of course, not everyone could read them, making the glyphs a trap in themselves. But not for Jooheon. He easily deciphered them and found the entrance right away. At that moment, a skills window popped up for Jooheon Suh, announcing that he had just earned the title of Expert Cryptographer and unlocked a new skill. On top of that, he awakened the Tomb Raider's basic skill, Linguistic, rank F. This meant his ability to understand, acquire, and speak all languages had improved. Not only could he now hear the voice of relics better, but his ability to communicate with them had also increased. Deciphering glyphs just became a lot easier for him. Feeling confident that things were going his way, Jooheon quickly found the tomb entrance. Using a small sword, he pried it open, and with a splash, the door finally gave way. But then, a warning appeared about the possibility of an intense energy emission from the location. Just as he processed this, a brilliant flash of light shot straight into the sky, drawing everyone's attention. Linda and Kiyoshi, who were still arguing nearby, noticed the light immediately. Kiyoshi recognized it as coming from the tomb entrance and hurried over, ordering the guards to stay put in case there was another explosion. He didn't want any civilians near the area. Linda, catching on, followed him and accused him of always lying whenever he opened his mouth. Kiyoshi, in return, warned that having others follow them would just cause more trouble. When they arrived at the tomb, the light was so bright they could barely see anything. Linda tossed a stone, and when they heard a splash, they realised there was water below. Without wasting any time, Kiyoshi made the bold decision to jump right in. Meanwhile, Jooheon was already inside the tomb when he heard a splash in the water. He figured, those dumbasses Kiyoshi and Linda were trying to follow him. Instead of worrying, Jooheon decided to give them some trouble and quickly found a trap to set. Kiyoshi and Linda finally made it into the tomb, but they then heard a loud noise getting closer. Suddenly, a huge wave of water rushed towards them, sweeping them off their feet. Yeah, that was all Jooheon's doing. While they struggled, he continued his search for relics and came across a pond. With only a dagger on him, he tossed it into the water and out popped a giant snake. The snake, clearly pleased, said Jooheon had lost something to the water. It opened its mouth to reveal 2 daggers, 1 gold, 1 silver, and asked which one was his. But Jooheon, being smart, knew exactly what this was. The snake was using the Axes of Gold and Silver relic, based on an old fable called the Honest Woodcutter. Jooheon, knowing the trick, said neither dagger were his. The snake was surprised, but offered him his original dagger anyway, saying, "This one's yours." Jooheon recognised it, but he knew better. If he said yes, he would have gotten his dagger back along with the gold and silver one, and the tomb would be cleared. But Jooheon had other ideas. So he asked the snake if he could check the dagger first. The snake agreed, but as soon as Jooheon grabbed it, he attacked. The snake, shocked, yelled that Jooheon was about to pass the trial. Why would he do that? Jooheon, having learned a lot from his past, calmly explained that he knew the snake was shady. There was no way to guarantee the relic wouldn't turn him into a crazy person if he accepted it. The snake was stunned that a human could figure that out. But Jooheon, already knowing the game, attacked again and demanded the relic. According to what Jooheon had studied, once you make it through a tomb filled with traps, you'll eventually find a relic. If you pass that relic's trial, it becomes yours. The people who succeeded in these trials gain special abilities from the relics, and ideally, they form a kind of friendly bond with them. This was seen as the normal relationship between humans and relics. But here's the thing. Relics naturally hate and harm humans. If someone is in contact with a relic for too long, they'll get sick. This is why those with access to healing relics ended up gaining a lot of power and influence. It was also why Jooheon was exploited by CEO Kwon in the past. However, this time around, Jooheon wasn't interested in being friendly with relics. Determined to assert his dominance, he attacked the snake fiercely, making sure it felt every bit of pain it deserved. The snake hissed and begged for mercy, but Jooheon was relentless, pouring out all his strength to make it submit. To control relics, though, you need a specific talent trait, otherwise the relic will control you. Scholars classified these talents into 3 main types. The first is affinity, which allows you to cooperate and build a good relationship with a relic. The second is dominance, which is all about forcing a relic to obey you. The third is synergy, which isn't so much an ability, but rather when an owner and a relic are perfectly attuned to each other, like a musician finding a musical relic. Most people prefer to raise their affinity because it's the easiest way to gain the full benefits of a relic, but there's a big downside. If you get too close to a relic, it releases a kind of poison that makes you sick. So, while affinity was the simplest to use, it came with a pretty dangerous cost. Jooheon knew all of this, which is why he didn't hesitate to attack the snake. He wanted the relic to obey him, and if it didn't, he'd just shatter it into a million pieces. After delivering this warning, Jooheon demanded the relic again. The snake, caught off guard, asked why. Humans used to desire relics after all. Suddenly, a flash of light appeared, and Jooheon found a small golden hammer in his hand. This was the relic he had earned. Almost immediately after, a skill window popped up, announcing, "The one who survived the tombs." Not only that, but his tomb excavation skill had been activated. Jooheon was thrilled with the new skill, especially since he only needed to activate 1 more. While he was thinking about this, another window appeared, this time labelling him as a relic abuser. It also mentioned that his dominant talent had increased, but his affinity had dropped. That was unexpected. He knew that the crow relic was messing with him again, but at this point, he didn't care too much. Meanwhile, Linda and Kiyoshi arrived at the scene. Kiyoshi looked at the pond and excitedly said it matched the prophecy exactly. This made Jooheon even more annoyed. Kiyoshi, expecting something to happen, tossed a small vase into the pond, hoping for a relic to appear. Linda was surprised, but nothing came out. Jooheon watched from a distance, but knew it wasn't the time to stand around, so he decided to get rid of them. As he prepared, another window appeared, warning him that his Egyptian knife only had half its uses left. He took this as a sign to use it wisely and deal with the interruptions. Kiyoshi, still confused, was surprised that the pond didn't respond as the prophecy said it would. Linda, on the other hand, was starting to get suspicious. She realised Japan already had someone using a prophetic relic. Even though they were partners, she didn't want Kiyoshi to get his hands on any more relics. Sensing her doubt, Kiyoshi told her to shut up, saying the real problem was that someone had already taken the relic. That meant more people were aware of them than they thought. Linda agreed and noticed some indentations on the ground with lots of footprints indicating someone had already been there. Jooheon, ready to act, threw a stone to grab their attention and ordered the relic to close the tomb. His plans weren't simple this time. The whole place began to shake as Jooheon ordered the relic to open a way for him to escape, leaving Kiyoshi and Linda to die inside. The moment Jooheon stepped outside, the tomb that had covered his apartment disappeared without a trace. Everyone who had been under the tomb's control regained their senses and started heading back to their homes. In the crowd, Jooheon spotted his friend Donghyun, who was excited to see him. Donghyun told Jooheon that the tomb in his place had vanished. Jooheon smiled and invited Donghyun to come inside and eat. But Donghyun hesitated. He was worried that the tomb might come back and trap him again. Jooheon reassured him that everything was fine now. On the flip side, Kiyoshi somehow managed to escape the tomb and was on the phone, furious and tense, talking about another prophecy involving a Korean player. He was seething because this mistake had cost him a fortune. The person on the other end tried to justify the situation, saying they had only found out too late due to the relic user of Future Guide's attitude. Apparently, she couldn't read the kanji properly, which caused them to miss the prophecy. Kiyoshi wasn't having it, snapping back that they had assured him scholars would be helping her. So, how did this even happen? The other person apologised, promising this wouldn't happen again, and warning him about the new player they discovered. This news caught Kiyoshi off guard. It was strange, but he was more angry than confused. The prophecy they had missed had actually said this new player was someone who would devour the world. Meanwhile, that new player, our hero Jooheon, was casually scrolling through his skills. He figured his new linguistic skill would come in handy, as it allowed him to read and understand pretty much any language. But at the same time, relics weren't well known to the world yet, so it didn't feel all that useful. Not wanting to waste any time, Jooheon shifted his focus to keeping an eye on his old rival, CEO Kwon, trying to figure out what the guy was planning next. Just then, there was a knock on the door, and Donghyun walked in, surprised to see Jooheon working on such complex stuff. He asked if Jooheon could really read all of it, to which Jooheon casually responded, "Of course." Then Jooheon asked Donghyun if he had heard anything about TKBM's CEO. Donghyun thought Jooheon might be job hunting, given all the complicated stuff he was studying on his computer. So he asked, why would a CEO of such a huge company want to meet with someone like you, an intern from a booger-sized company? Jooheon just smiled and replied that he'd already left that company, so it didn't matter anymore. Donghyun was taken aback, realising this was a whole new Jooheon he was dealing with, the kind of guy who would actually quit his job. But Jooheon had bigger plans. He was thinking of using Kyungju's gallery to dig up some info on the CEO, Kwon. In another scene, the Jiang gallery was a mess. The place had been emptied out and their boss, Kyungju, had been arrested. The workers were panicking, looking to Seongwoo-oh for answers. With Kyungju behind bars, they couldn't continue their business and were essentially unemployed. Seongwoo, who was now acting as their little dirty boss, knew exactly who was responsible for all this. Jooheon Suh. There was no way he was going to let this slide. He needed to find a way to get Kyungju back. The remaining workers had faith that Seongwoo would figure out something and take care of the situation. Seongwoo, on the other hand, was already plotting his revenge against Jooheon. Right then, Seongwoo's phone rang, and it was none other than Jooheon himself. Furious, Seongwoo wondered why Jooheon would even dare to call him now. The workers quickly figured out who it was on the other side of the line. When Seongwoo finally picked up, Jooheon casually asked, "What took you so long?" smugly, making Seongwoo even angrier. Yelling into the phone, Seongwoo demanded to know how Jooheon had the nerve to get Kyungju and Kyungtae arrested, and how he'd managed to get all their artwork confiscated. Jooheon just laughed. "I'm surprised you're still in business. I expected you to be bankrupt by now," he said. Then, with a smirk, he added, "Since you're about to close up shop, I've got an offer for you. How about you go to Midas for me?" Now, Midas wasn't just any place. It was the world's largest secret auction house located in Las Vegas, where the most incredible treasures and relics could be found. Jooheon knew for a fact that CEO Tae-jun Kwon attended this auction and had acquired a powerful relic around this time. If Jooheon could keep an eye on what was going on at Midas, he might be able to track what CEO Kwon was up to. So, he made Seong-woo an offer. Go to Midas during this month's auction, find a few key items, and track down a certain person for him. That person was Jack Kamen, also known as JK, a fake name Tae-jun Kwon often used. Jooheon told Seong-woo that if they couldn't find this guy, all they had to do was report back to him. But he warned that if they lied or messed up, well, they'd all be dead. Seong-woo was completely confused. How were they supposed to pull this off? Kyungju, the one with all the connections, was gone. But Jooheon didn't care about their problems. He was only offering them money for the quality of information they provided. The better the info, the more they'd earn. Seong-woo, still angry, snapped and refused the offer, saying no matter how much Jooheon paid, he wasn't interested. But Jooheon didn't flinch. Calm as ever, he said, "That's fine. If you don't want to do business with me, I'll just save some money. I'll still find a way to go to Midas." Then Jooheon gave them one last warning. If they didn't cooperate, he'd come after their bosses next. That warning struck a nerve. Seong-woo, realizing they didn't have much of a choice, agreed to discuss more details on their next call. With the CEO Kwon situation handled for now, it was time for Jooheon to shift focus back to relic hunting. Jooheon was out and about when he heard some unsettling news. A woman in her 30s had attempted suicide by setting herself on fire. At first, it didn't seem connected to anything tomb-related, but Jooheon's instinct told him there might be more to it. While lost in thought, someone suddenly snapped at him for just standing around. That someone was Kiyoshi, and he looked absolutely furious. Jooheon recognized him right away. If Kiyoshi was here, it probably meant a new tomb was about to appear nearby. Jooheon decided to mess with him a little, using his linguistic skills to speak to Kiyoshi in Japanese. It worked like a charm. Kiyoshi, assuming Jooheon was another Japanese speaker, immediately apologized. This was their first direct interaction, and let's just say, it wasn't going too smoothly. As Jooheon looked at him, he noticed that Kiyoshi was carrying a relic, and making it pretty obvious too. Now, Jooheon knew for sure that he was interested in whatever Kiyoshi was holding. Kiyoshi, still fuming, pushed Jooheon in frustration, but Jooheon quickly spilled his juice on him. That made Kiyoshi even angrier, but Jooheon played it cool, apologizing and claiming it was an accident. As he helped Kiyoshi wipe off the juice, Jooheon smoothly slipped his hand into Kiyoshi's pocket, finding both a bracelet relic and a small case relic. He was tempted to take them right then, but it would have been too obvious. Instead, Jooheon handed Kiyoshi his ID, which he pretended had been dropped. Kiyoshi grew suspicious, wondering if Jooheon had noticed anything. If Jooheon realized he was from the Japanese excavation team, it could cause problems. But before they could dwell on it, the ground beneath them started to tremble, as if an earthquake had hit. The rumbling grew stronger until finally something emerged. It was the tomb Kiyoshi had been waiting for. Both Kiyoshi and Jooheon were pumped. The race was on to see who could get inside first and snag the relic. Who will make it? You'll have to stay tuned to find out in the next part. Thanks a ton for watching the video. If you had a good time, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you won't miss out on future content like this. Thanks again for hanging out, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.